Good morning, everybody. I want to happy Saturday to you. If everybody can hear me, just go ahead and give me the thumbs up or just say I can hear you in the chat box. Thank you. So that means that everybody can hear me. All righty. Very good. Well, today's a beautiful day. So I just finished my meditation and I've just finished my exercise, but I'm going to go over a little bit of exercise with you as well in just a second. I keep saying I'm going to do that every Saturday, but I get involved in the talk and I never get a chance to do it. All right. But today we're going to do a little jumping jacks, and I'm going to see if I can do a little stretching with yoga just to kind of see if you can do it as well. So I had to take my socks off because I'm on a hardwood floor and it gets slippery if I have socks on. Are y'all going to exercise with me this morning? I know. Are you just going to watch me exercise? All right. Nobody's answering that question. All righty. All righty. So just a couple more minutes. Let's do it. All right. So it's a beautiful Saturday morning, and I'm glad you all are here. I hope you all continue to come back. Every week, I'd love you to come back, but once a month, because the data shows very, very clearly that the more you come back, the more you learn, and the more you engulf and actually using this tool up above, the better your results are going to be with fat loss. Okay. So as I continue to get everybody on, what I'm going to do is make an announcement about the folks that are here today, primarily, who have an appointment. The rest of you are here today because you want to be here and you want to continue to learn, because again, you may have read the same data that I read all the time, is that once you become mentally engaged in what it is that you're doing, then your tool that I give you, whether it's the bypass, the sleeve, the lap band, the ESG, or the Wegovy, or the medical weight loss, all of those things come together a whole lot nicer, and you're able to lose the fat and keep it off for the long haul. Okay? So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind is that what I'm going to tell you today, that even the ones who've been here before, what I hope to accomplish over a period of time is that every time I give you this information about how we store fat, and more importantly, how we get rid of fat, every time we discuss it, a new little light bulb, a new little twist should occur every week, every time you hear it. I mean, it does even for me, and I've done this lecture thousands and thousands of times. So every time I spew it out to you, every time I tell you about it, I am finding new ways to get your mind engaged. And that's how you learned in school, because you didn't go to, I don't know, third grade, fourth grade and learn mathematics in one day or once a month. You had to practice it and hear it over and over and over again. And it became a part of your mindset, your brain. And now you can teach others. And that's what I'm hoping that you will do, is that as I empower you with this information, I'm hoping that you'll be able to teach others, because what we're going to be talking about is something that's very crucial to our well-being. What I'm talking about is that we've talked about all these wars and weapons of mass destruction, but the one thing that nobody has told you about is that the weapons of mass destruction are what we are doing to ourselves every single day. And this whole thing is pretty much predicated around what the effects of insulin are. There are all sort of hormones in the body, but the one we're concentrating on today is insulin. And what elevates insulin are carbohydrates. So this whole thing is going to be predicated upon what we're doing to our body when we take in carbohydrates. And as a result, we're increasing insulin and what that does to our body. You will learn that it is indeed carbohydrates, the wrong type of carbohydrates. Not all carbohydrates are the weapons of mass destruction that we're talking about. Okay. Now, I'm going to share my slides with you, and we're going to have everybody who is here for an appointment today for their supervised weight loss visits to do a couple of things. Number one, if you've got the questionnaire that came along with your appointment, if you got that questionnaire, you filled it out, then you don't have to do this next step, which is answer some questions that I'm going to be giving to you on the next slide. If you did not get that questionnaire, or your dog ate it, or something happened to it because of a technological glitch, which happens to me quite a bit, then I need you to take a pencil and paper. So take a moment, get a pencil and paper, so you can write down these questions, and then you'll answer those questions live here. And basically, don't put it into the chat. You're going to write it down, and then I'm going to give you an email address of a person in our office, Elaine Botino, where you can email that to. So first of all, your name and address in the chat box, not your address, your name and your date of birth in the chat box, because I want your date of birth because a lot of you have the same names. We have a lot of names in our electronic medical record, and a lot of people have the same names, but it's very rare for you to have the same name and the same birthday. That's why I need your birthday. Okay. All right, I think we got enough people that we can get started. And also, for those of you who've been here before, I want you to also get on hand, get your, because this is what we do every week as well. We're going to get your keto meter. And if you don't have your keto meter, if you have keto sticks, that's fine. Use the keto sticks as well, because I want to get your level of ketones. And we're going to talk about this as to why this is important, primarily because we want to know what it is that we're losing. And the way that you do that is through the keto meter. Okay, we'll discuss that. So let me see if I can go ahead and share my slides and so we can get started. Okay. Okay, I believe everybody can see this. This is our education webinar. Okay, let me see if I can get the. All righty. And at the same time, I have to put the chat box up. So if everybody can see this, nope, that's the wrong. Let me stop sharing that. Try one more time. Share my screen. This is what I want to share. All right, so everybody can see my slides. This again, I'm going to open up the chat box so I can see your responses. Okay, if you can see my slides again, would you please give me a thumbs up that you can see my slides? Okay. Okay. Very good. Thank you. All righty. So let me go to the slides that are important here. So this is the ones who did not get the electronic questionnaire. These are the 5 questions that I want you to fill out and send it to Elaine Botino, and I'll give you her email address. So number 1, I want you to tell me, and each one of these things have a purpose. All right. I want you to tell me what you've eaten for the last couple of days. Did you eat 3 meals a day? Did you eat 6 meals a day? Did you eat only 1 meal a day? And what were those meals that you ate? Okay. Write that down and give you a second on that. And then the second question is going to be, I want you to tell me the number of grams of carbohydrates you ate in the last 2 days. That's a crucial question because we have to know the answer to that. Now, the majority of people around this world don't go around counting carbs, but it's critical, and I'm going to show you the reason why it's critical. It's extremely important that you know the number of grams of carbohydrates, and I'll give you a hint. The reason is that our body can only hold so many grams of carbs, and there are some consequences when we take more than we need to. Okay, there are a certain number of grams of carbohydrates that we can take and remain healthy, but then when we go over a certain amount, it becomes unhealthy, and we're going to go through that mechanism as to how it becomes unhealthy. It's just like anything else. You can take a single glass of wine a day, and it's not so bad. But if you take 3 bottles of wine every day, it's not so good, right? So I don't want to get into cliches and talk about everything in moderation because I know everything not in moderation, but there are certain things that you have to account for that the body is taking in, and you have to be wary that the body takes in what it needs to, and then the rest of it does some bad things with. So tell me the number of grams of carbohydrates you've taken in for the last couple of days. Now, if you don't know how to calculate carbs, then obviously you can look at it on the side of the box, and anything that's in a box and you're calculating carbs that you're taking in, and it's not the best place to get your food anyway from a box, but nevertheless, that's the first thing you do. That the Food and Drug Administration requires that all food products, the ingredients be listed, okay? Now, the problem is that when you take in the good carbohydrates, like in vegetables or the produce section of your grocery store, it doesn't have that label on it. So you have to do a little homework. And so you have to look up, well, how many grams of carbohydrates are in a serving of asparagus? How many grams of carbohydrates are in the serving of salad or in the serving of spinach? The good carbohydrates that I want you to eat and that you should eat, and I call them good carbohydrates because they're the ones that feed your microbiome, which is a topic for another session that we won't get into. But the carbohydrates that we consume in our mouth should be carbohydrates that have another function. We don't really need those carbohydrates in order to induce energy because our body makes its own carbohydrates. I'm going to show you that in just a second in our slides. You don't really have to take in carbohydrates other than the vegetables, the green leafy vegetables, which give you a type of carbohydrate called cellulose. And those carbohydrates get digested, so they go into your small bowel and into your intestine, and they're food for your microbiome, which is critical for your livelihood. And like I said, that's a topic for another session. All right, count the number of grams of carbohydrates. And if you cannot figure out how many grams of carbohydrates are in vegetables and in the produce section, then you want you to look it up on Google and then say, just type into Google, how do I calculate the number of grams of carbohydrates in a serving of spinach? And you'll quickly find out that it's not much. There are not many carbohydrates in the serving of spinach. 3 grams maybe, and a side of lettuce, 3 or 4 grams, and the side of asparagus, same thing, up to 7 grams. So you'll kind of get the gist of what I'm talking about as we go along here, okay? Next slide. The next, number 3. We're going to check our keto eater results. We're going to do that today. And then you're going to put that on that piece of paper as well. Give me today's results. If you don't have a keto meter, don't worry about it. Eventually, I will want you to get one, or I'll want you to get the keto sticks, but I need you to have some way to measure whether or not you're burning fat. Ketones are the byproduct of you metabolizing fat. That's all we're here today. If I do the surgery on you, if I give you Wegovy, the end goal is for you to burn fat, for you to metabolize fat. And you got to know it, because if you're not burning fat, then you got to change the game. And so the scale that you get on every day to measure whether you're losing weight is not as important as you think it is. Because when you lose weight, you're losing 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 components. And we all know the answer to that. We're either losing muscle, water, bone, or fat. Out of all 4 of those components, all we're interested in today and every single day is to lose fat. If we lose fat, we're healthy. If we lose bone, water, or muscle, we are extremely unhealthy. And we're rapidly aging if we do. So getting on the scale, I would argue, is less important than having this little thing right here, primarily because if you are indeed in ketosis with a level of above 10, you don't really need the scale. As long as you're burning fat, you're getting healthier. So if you're getting on that scale to think, okay, fine, I'm losing weight and I'm healthy. That's not the whole picture because you don't know what it is that you're losing just with the scale alone. But if you had this without the scale and you were burning ketones and at a steady rate of greater than 10, then you know that you are indeed getting healthier, regardless of what the scale says. Give you an example. One day I got on the scale and I gained weight, but I blew into this thing and I was in ketosis. What does that mean? I gained weight. I said, oh man. But when I blew into this, I was burning fat. I was in ketosis. I was greater than 10. What did I gain? Muscle. I gained muscle mass, which is great because as I lose fat, the skin gets a little floppy. You all complaining to me about it all the time. Hey, doc, I got this excess skin. How do you combat that? You tone your muscle up. You build muscle by doing resistance training. And that scale didn't tell me that I was unhealthy because I gained weight. It didn't tell me that. But in my mind, if that was the only tool that I used, then I would say, oh man, I gained some weight and I'm unhealthy. Not so. I gained muscle mass, so I'm healthier because I'm burning fat. Okay. Again, the keto meat is important. All right. Number 4. Oops. Number 4 and 5. So document what kind of exercise you did for the last couple of days. Did you walk last couple of days? Did you go to the gym and do some resistance training for the last couple of days? Did you do Pilates? Did you do yoga? What did you do? And if you did nothing, it's okay. We're not, this is not to criticize anybody, or it's just to get you engaged in what's going to keep you healthy. Because later on in life, I guarantee you, later on in life, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, your body's going to look back and it's going to thank you for the changes that you are making today. Remember that. Your body will thank you for the changes that you make an effort at making today. Okay. All right. So those things I want to put in there along with your weight and your height. And then you're going to email those to ebotino@peachtreebariatrics.com. ebotino@peachtreebariatrics.com. So today, let's start with a few jumping jacks while you continue to write that down. All right. So everybody, let's go ahead and get up and get some stretching done. This is just only take 30 seconds. Okay. We're just going to do 20 jumping jacks, just kind of get the body warmed up. If you hadn't been to your doctor and they hadn't cleared you to do this type of stuff, don't do it. I don't want anybody having any problems. Okay. So I'm going to do 20 jumping jacks and I hope you're doing them with me. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Now you'll be a little winded. That's a good thing because your body's trying to metabolize some stuff. Now let me see if I can actually do what I want you to do as far as yoga. If you can do your yoga, you can see me now. I go down on an upward dog. Hello. I do downward dog. I push the leg back here. I bring it forward. Yeah. Now I do warrior 1. Then do warrior 2. Go up. Look at the hand. Take it down. Look at the other hand. Twist it around. Look at the other hand. And do that on both sides. Now, by now, you should be pretty winded. Now, I would sit down, but I cannot sit down right now. All right. So, catch your breath. And let's see what we got. I'm looking in the chat box again. And every now and then you'll see me look at the chat box and I'm going to answer some questions. All righty. So you got the supervised diet needs. And those are the things you're going to send into Elaine Botino at peachtreebariatrics.com. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and do this. Turn it on. If you don't have this, I'm going to show you a slide where you can get it. You can get it at Amazon, but it does a countdown. The first time you blow into it, you're going to blow out the impurities because it collects things inside from the environment, and you got to blow those out. And then the second time, it'll do a countdown. That'll be for your results. Let's blow. So it gives you a check mark. Check mark says that it's blown out the impurities, and it's going to give me another countdown from 15 seconds. And then we're going to give me my results. Now, my results this morning were 27. I've drank the coffee, and I don't want you to take any food or any coffee. The first thing you do, you get up in the morning, you blow into your keto meter because that's going to give you the most accurate results. So I was 27 this morning, meaning that I'm burning fat. How did I do that? My insulin level was low. How did I do that? So it says blow again. This is the second time. This is going to be inaccurate, but for me, it was 27 this morning. Give me a little error because I took an inhale on it before. But mine was 27. Now, with that said, I want you to put yours in the chat box, which people are already doing. 9.4, great. 4.9, great. You got a little ways to go. 9.4, you're almost there. 19, 17, you're almost there. Anybody else? They asked me to blow again this time. 26 and 4. 26 is good. 4, we got a little ways to go, but you'll get there. I promise you'll get there. I promise you'll get there primarily because if indeed you're taking these little lessons, you'll get into ketosis, okay? You need one. All right, let me go ahead and say this is what we're going to get. It's called the Keto Scan Mini. Keto Scan Mini, okay? And you can see it's expensive. I used to have a slide that showed where the keto sticks. Now, the keto sticks are a little cheaper, 35, 40 bucks. But they require that you measure the ketone called beta hydroxybutyrate in your blood. So you got to prick your finger, you got to put the little tape onto the drop of blood, and it gives you the reading. It's cheaper, it is convenient, but as a surgeon, I can't prick my finger every single day, so I use the keto meter. Okay? So the Keto Scan Mini is what you need to get. And what does that thing tell you? Well, like I said before, when somebody says that 3.2, you need 3.2 in the beginning, you're burning a small amount of fat. You're making a small amount of fat. Ketones are the ashes of burning wood, right? When you burn wood, you burn something and it's all burnt, you get ashes. So ketones are that byproduct, the ashes of burning fat. So if you're burning fat, you're going to have ketones. And if you're burning fat at a rate that's good, where you're actually losing it from your body, which is greater than 10, and that's the level you see here, optimal, then you're gonna basically be between 10 and 40 parts per million, and that's gonna be optimal. Now, do I expect you to stay there forever? No, but I'm trying to get you adapted to a low carb lifestyle, okay? Not a diet, because diets come and go. You start a diet in order to do a certain event, then you get back to your old habits. We've got to make a change today that we want to make this a lifestyle. Because if you don't make it a lifestyle, then you continue to go down that path of getting sicker. The more I'm going to show you about how we're storing fat every single day, and if we don't stop it, we're going to have problems. I may have mentioned it last time, but one of my good friends died last week undergoing heart surgery. He had come in for a gastric sleeve years ago. He chickened out, decided he didn't have it. He was a surgeon, and he had problems. He just retired last year, and he died. because again, this fat is causing some bad things to your body. It's really causing some bad things to your body. And because it doesn't hurt every single day, you're thinking that this is not really bothering you so much, but it is. And let me ask you something. How many of you all get up in the morning and you just don't feel right? Something's aching. Something's causing you problems. You got diabetes, you got hypertension, but there are other things that you may have. Like I had fibromyalgia. I had, my neck wouldn't move, my back was hurting. I was having all of these little problems and I just didn't feel like I felt when I was in my 20s. As you go through life, you want to enjoy life. And the only way you can enjoy life is to feel good every single day. And we can do that. But how many of you right now just don't feel right? You're not hurting. You're not in pain or excruciating pain. It's just something that's not right with my body. Well, that is indeed the fat. That is the cytokines, the poisons that fat is releasing into your body, along with insulin. Those inflammatory cytokines, tumor necrosis factor alpha, all those things are basically exuding from your fat cells, and they're causing inflammation in your body. That inflammation is what you're feeling. A lot of you think that when you have knee pain or back pain, it's because of the pounds of your weight. It's not. It is not. Fat doesn't weigh that much. But, and what you're getting is so much exudation of those cytokines that is causing inflammation in your body. If I was to measure everybody, and we've done this study, if I was to measure everybody's inflammatory cytokines with a blood test, an expensive one, but we've done it, everybody would have elevation of their C-reactive protein and their homocysteine levels, because those are the markers that you've got inflammation in your body. Almost everybody does. Now, if I was to take an obese football player that had fat but also had muscle, and he's moving around and exercising, those guys don't necessarily have inflammation in their body because their muscle is actually doing most of the work. But if indeed, once they stop to exercise the football and the fat remains, they are then prime victims for this problem as far as inflammation is concerned. So you're not feeling well. And if you are feeling well and you're here primarily because you just don't want to look fat, then that's a different story. But the majority of people are not on this call because of the way that they look. And as a matter of fact, because almost all of you were born within the last 40 years, the majority of individuals on this planet, on this, at least in the United States, are overweight or obese. So to most people who've been born in the 1960s and on, the majority of people are overweight and obese. And so that's what the world looks like. So you're not used to looking any other way. As a matter of fact, you think that the people who are thin or skinny are sick. And that's just because we're used to seeing overweight and obese people every single day. And that's okay. So we're not here because of our looks. Because a lot of people who are overweight and obese, they're not sick, but they can get sick if indeed their muscle mass is decreased and basically their fat mass is increased. Hope I'm making sense with that, okay? Like I said it before, every now and then you'll see me look over to the side and I'm looking at the chat box to see if there's any sort of questions that are popping up, so we won't get too far behind as far as the questions are concerned, because after I show you the slide that I want to show you and give you that great information that nobody's told you before, then we're going to open it up to questions and answers, okay? All right, so getting to the level where you're burning fat and you're at the optimal level of 10 or greater, that is when you are indeed burning fat and you're basically not necessarily, you're not needing the scale, okay? All right, so let me see, do I get any more? I got 131 today, that's good, 3.2. Okay, that's 3.2 and 5. All right, so you're getting there, but if you stay at it and practice what we're talking about today, you will get there. Okay. This just tells you how much fat you can lose, but this tells you basically if you maintain on your ketometer greater than 10 parts per million, then you could lose 2 to 3 pounds of fat in a week. 1 week, 7 days, 2 to 3 pounds of fat is what greater than 10 means. Or you can lose 8 to 12 pounds in a month. Are we doing that? No. The majority of us are not doing that because we haven't developed or left it or made it into our lifestyles. And we, in order to accomplish that, we have to make it into our lifestyles. So whatever tool that I give you, whether it's surgery or non-surgical, you have to incorporate this other portion of your tool in order to make it work. Because all I'm going to give you is the nail. All the surgery, the lap band, the sleeves, the gastric bypass, or the ESG, or the Wegovy, or the Ozempic, all that is the nail. Try to build a house with just a nail. It's impossible. The minimum thing you're going to need is a hammer. What is the hammer? That's what I'm giving you, the knowledge. So you couple the hammer, the knowledge, with the nail, the sleeve, the gastric bypass, the ESG, the Wegovy. You couple those two together, you'll build a great house. Your body is the temple, your body is the house. Okay. All right. All right. So we talked about that. Let me just kind of talk just briefly about Wegovy, because everybody wants to know why do I need to have surgery? Why just have some Wegovy? Wegovy is okay. It's that the new thing, the semaglutide, that's come out that everybody's going crazy about, and we've made it for a while. And they've made different versions of it. And the latest version called Mounjaro is pretty much the best because it's a dual type of hormone receptor and agonist. And so it attacks at this area here called GLP-1 action. GLP-1 is called glucagon-like polypeptide 1. And Mounjaro actually acts in this area too. There's this area called the GIP, glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide. I'm not going to get too much into that, but just to say we're kind of making products, drugs again, to do some of the things that the body naturally does. So when we activate our GLP-1, what happens is that we increase our metabolism, but at the same time, we lose our sensation of wanting to eat. We increase our satiety, increase being full. So when you increase your metabolism, you got to burn something in order to make energy. But if you decrease your food intake, you're going to be at a negative caloric balance. Okay. And that's what we want. We want a negative caloric balance because for a period of time, because that's how we lose fat. Because when you're at a negative caloric balance, the body has to have some sort of macronutrient in order to burn. And what do we have an abundance of? Well, we have an abundance of fat. That's how we lose. So activating GLP-1, which does those two things, is important. So what Wegovy does is exactly that. Okay. So Wegovy is expensive. You can take it and you can get it into the form of a shot, and all these things are semaglutides. And it accomplishes those things. Now, our studies have shown that it actually works best in people who are just overweight and who are just slightly obese. So in that low range, even if you have marked obesity, you'll lose a few pounds, but your body will get accustomed to it and you'll lose, if you have a BMI of 40 or 45, you'll lose a few pounds, but you'll still be obese. And if you're still obese, that means you still have an excess amount of fat and you still have those inflammatory cytokines, and you're not going to be well. My goal is to get you well. My goal is not just for you to lose weight. And so many people are coming to me because they just want to lose weight. But let me tell you, I really, really want you to concentrate on just losing fat, okay? And the only way you're going to be able to know that is to actually measure your fat burning, okay? So I'll give patients Wegovy or semaglutide when they want to lose some fat, but they don't have a whole lot to lose. And those patients are ideal for that. There's a problem associated with it, though, because you've got to take it all the time. And when you stop taking, you regain the weight, if you're going to look at your weight. And the reason is because you make your own GLP-1. You make your own Wegovy. You make your own, you make it in your intestinal tract. Here it is in your lower part of your small bowel. If I give you some, outside of your body making it, you will then suppress your body making it. So your body says, okay, somebody else is doing the work for me. I don't have to work today. So your own GLP-1 gets lazy and it stops working. And that's okay as long as you're taking the exogenous amount. But as soon as you stop taking it, you say, okay, fine. Yeah, okay, I can't afford it anymore. My GLP-1, I need to get it on my own. I need to activate my own. Guess what? It doesn't come back so fast. It takes a few months in order for it to come back. In the meantime, while your own GLP-1 is being ramped up, you're eating a lot, you're gaining the fat a lot, and you're starting all over. The same kind of scenario you've done all your life. Lose weight, gain weight, lose weight, gain weight. We want to get out of that cycle. So anyway, I was just wanting to mention to you where the GLP-1, the craze about the GLP-1 is because Big Pharma has made a drug. And we're all liking the idea that we can take a pill or a drug and we could lose this weight without us having to do so much. But that's not where I want you to go. Again, it is a tool. You got to concentrate it with here. But again, you need to exercise. You need to do some resistance training. You need to build up your muscle mass as well, because without all those things, all you got is a nail. Okay. All right. Let's continue. I'm going to get to, let me just, I'll come back to just a second. This is the slide that I want you to see. Okay. All righty. All right, so I'm looking at the chat box again to see if there's any questions. A doctor recently put me on Mounjaro due to type 2 diabetes diagnosis. Should I continue to take it after surgery? Well, that will, when you're taking Mounjaro or Wegovy or anything else, a GLP-1 analog, and then we do the surgery on you, we're going to have you stop it for a little while, because if indeed after surgery, your own GLP-1 is what I'm going to activate during surgery. But if you suppressed it by taking it before surgery, it's going to take some time to get back. So what's going to happen? What's the end result after surgery? You're not going to lose weight as fast. So normally, if you hadn't been on Mounjaro or Ozempic or whatever, you would lose the weight at a pretty healthy stance. But if you've taken GLP-1 analogs, again, you're suppressing your own. And so after I do the surgery, which is meant to activate those same hormones, then it's not going to get activated. So you're going to be disappointed. You're going to come back to the office and say, Doc, I hadn't lost anything. And I've lost 3 pounds and it's been a month. It's just going to take some time. So yes, we're going to probably want to get you off. We're going to wean you off the Mounjaro, the type 2 diabetes. And then we're going to talk about that a little bit too. Because here's the first time that you're going to hear me say that type 2 diabetes is curable without surgery, without you doing anything other than the fact that I'm going to tell you just to decrease what is causing your diabetes. What's causing your diabetes? Excess glucose that you're taking in. And your body can only take in so much. And so if I get your mind to figure out, okay, fine, I can only take in so many grams of carbohydrates per day. And that's the reason for the questions that I've asked you about the grams of carbohydrates. You got to know. So if I can convince you that, okay, I can take in carbohydrates, but I don't have to take in carbohydrates. But if I do, I can only take in so much. But the problem is the standard American diet, we're taking in more than we need to. But I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Okay. All right. When you eat that cheeseburger, what's going on? How do you get fat into your cells? How we got all that fat beneath our skin envelope, and what does it consist of? When we store fat, we're storing it in the form of triglyceride. So this yellow diagram here, filled with yellow, just pretend that that's a cell, and it's a fat cell. So when we store fat, we're storing fat in the form of triglyceride. Okay? Full stop. Fat is stored as triglyceride. Well, triglyceride has to get into that cell. And basically, when we eat let me just kind of briefly, I don't want to take you to biochemistry, but when you take in a cheeseburger, you're taking in the bread, that's the carbohydrate, you're taking in the protein, that's the meat, and you're taking in the fat, which is also the meat, okay? So you got three macronutrients that you're taking in, all right? The carbohydrates, they get into the bloodstream and they immediately go into the blood. You got a certain amount that the blood can hold. It immediately goes to the brain, it immediately goes to your kidneys and all over the place, so in the muscles, and it gets used. It gets converted by the TCA cycle or the Krebs cycle into energy, okay? When you take in protein, our body needs protein. All these enzymatic processes throughout your body, all your muscle, everything needs protein. So that with carbohydrates and protein, for the most part, it gets taken up into the blood and it gets utilized for the most part. When you take in fats, a couple of things happen to them, okay? But when you take in fats, the things that you've known in the past are the things that you thought that you've known in the past, is that you're taking too many fats and you're gonna get fat. It's not true. It's so far from the truth that it's interesting, but that's all you've learned. And that's why the grocery stores are filled with low-fat foods. But when you take in fat, that fat goes into the blood, it gets washed by the bile salts and all that whole complex system, but it eventually winds up by triglyceride. Now, triglyceride is then controlled as to whether it goes into the cells to be used or whether it stays out of the cells. Whether it goes into the cells to be stored as fat, which is what we're doing mostly, and there's a reason, or whether it's immediately used as energy. So this is called LPL, and this is called GLUT4 transporter, the two big red arrows here, okay? These LPL stands for lipoprotein lipase, and then you have GLUT4 transporter. What are those things? Those are the things, number one, LPL is used in order to break this molecule down to smaller pieces so that it can be transported inside the cell. Triglyceride is too big of a molecule to get into the wall of the cell. This wall is very secure, and the wall is very firm, and it has the small little holes in it that can allow certain things to go in and certain things to come out, but triglyceride is too big. So LPL is called lipoprotein lipase. I won't test you on that today. It's called lipoprotein lipase, and it breaks triglyceride down into glycerol and fatty acids. Glycerol is nothing but a byproduct or form of glucose. But anyway, fatty acids are then something that you can use in the Krebs cycle to make energy, or if you're not doing anything, your body says, well, let me store it. Since you're not doing anything, you don't need energy. So it's going to push it into the fatty acids. It's going to push fatty acids into the cell, and nothing keeps it there. So it goes in and goes out. So it doesn't get stored right away. It only gets stored if there's something to anchor it in place. Okay. So then you have GLUT4 transporter that says, okay, in order to keep the fatty acids inside the cell, you need glycerol. And when you get glucose inside the cell, glucose gets transformed into glycerol. They're pretty much the same. And glycerol then sees its partner, fatty acids, and they marry, and that's where you get storage. So the bottom line, what I'm saying there is that these two things are the things that push fat into the cell. But they have to be activated. If they're not activated, they will not work. If they're not activated, you cannot store fat. What activates them? Insulin, okay? Insulin activates LPL. All you need is a little insulin to activate LPL. On the other hand, you need a lot of insulin in order to activate GLUT4 transporter, all right? So most carbohydrates that you take in, and insulin is activated by carbohydrates. Most carbohydrates that you take in activates both of these because we take in a lot of carbohydrates. But if you were only taking green leafy vegetables, asparagus, and what have you, that wouldn't be a high enough glycemic product for you to activate both. It takes a little bit more to activate GLUT4 transporter. So you activate the LPL. I think I'm getting too deep here, but anyway, Hang with me just for a second, please. So if I eat vegetables, if I eat some asparagus, I'll activate the LPL. Okay. So I'll break it down into these things. I'll break it down to glycerol and fatty acids, but I hadn't activated that yet. So it's not going to get stored. It's going to be used as energy. If I eat the vegetables, I use that to make energy, to make my hands move around and all that kind of stuff. So vegetables, which don't have a high glycemic load, doesn't activate the glucose transporter, but it breaks it down. The LPL is breaking it down into glycerol and fatty acids, and we use the fatty acids. When I take in carbohydrates and when I take in macaroni and cheese or rice with that steak or that salmon, then I'm activating both LPL and glucose transporter. And so I'm causing this mechanism to push the fat into the cell. Now, I haven't even given you the whammy part yet, because the whammy part is that that's supposed to happen. Us storing fat is a cool thing, because at some point in time, we got to use that fat for energy. So in order to use it, now that we all got it, that's why we're here today, right? We're here today for Dr. Duncan to tell me how I'm going to get this fat off my body. Well, this fat is now in our stores. Everybody on this call has this problem. We're storing every single day because we're taking in carbohydrates and we're increasing our insulin levels. We're becoming insulin resistant because we're taking in too much. All right. But let me give you the whammy part first. The insulin deactivates the one enzyme that allows us to break it down. The one enzyme that allows us to burn fat that we can demonstrate with our ketone meter, that enzyme is hormone sensitive lipase. Follow me here now. You're supposed to store fat, but your fat that you got right now today is supposed to be utilized. But the majority of us on this call today, we're not doing that. We're not activating the hormone system. We're deactivating. And what deactivates hormone sensitive lipase? The same thing that push fat into the cell, insulin. What activates insulin? Carbohydrates. Okay, so we're sitting here today. We've eaten, if you've eaten breakfast already, you've had some orange juice, or you had some pancakes, or you had some toast, you've just activated pushing fat into the cell, and you deactivated your hormone sensitive lipase, because that carbohydrate raises up insulin and has deactivated your hormone sensitive lipase, and so you're not breaking it down. So what are we doing every single day? Every single day we're doing that. Every single day we're deactivating hormone sensitive lipase, and we're accumulating it. So we go to the gym, we're working, but none of that exercise is more powerful than these three enzymes. Full stop. Not a single bit of exercise that you can do. You can run to the end of the earth if you want to on that treadmill, but you're not going to overpower those enzymes. So working out ain't going to get it for you. Okay. Now, so when you deactivate hormone sensitive lipase, you cannot break the fat down to its fatty acids to use it for energy. So every single day we're storing and storing and storing. So doc, how come I can't get rid of it? You can't get rid of it because you continue to put in the carbohydrates. So let's go to that for a second. You think that you need carbohydrates, but I'm just going to show you that these things like glycerol, when you break fat down from your salmon, from your cheeseburger, from your meat, you break it down into glycerol. That glycerol is the glucose. So you need a certain amount of glucose in your bloodstream for the brain and kidneys to function and all that. You make that from glycerol. You make that from the protein you take in, because when you digest your protein, it turns into amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks for glucose. So your body is making its own glucose from the fat and the protein that you're taking in. So the bottom line, and nobody has told you this, you don't need to take in a single carbohydrate other than the vegetables. When you do, and if you have to take in carbohydrates, you know that you can only take in so many. And this is one of the questions I'm going to ask you now, because I've been talking too much. Your liver can hold a certain amount of carbohydrates that you put into your body. You don't have to put carbohydrates into your mouth, but if you do, your liver can only hold so much. Okay. So you're not meant to put carbohydrates into your mouth, but we do. We've been taught to do that from day one we were born. So I'm not going to convince you not to do it. I'm not going to do that today. Over a period of time, I hope to be able to convince you. But you don't need to put carbohydrates into your face, i.e. your mouth. You don't need to do that. Your body makes them on its own. It doesn't make its own essential amino acids, which comes from protein. It doesn't make the essential fatty acids, which comes from fat. You've got to take fat and protein in, or else you'll die. But it makes its own carbohydrates. So we have a luxurious life because we're able to eat carbohydrates, but you don't need them. You don't need to take them into your mouth, okay? Your body needs them, but your body's making it. And so your liver already has carbohydrates in it. It already has glycogen in it because it's made it from the fat that you took in and it's made it from the protein. So you have a reserve of glycogen in your liver already. So I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to put it on in the chat box. How many grams of carbohydrates, i.e. in the form of glycogen, can the body hold? Can the liver hold? That's what we, okay? I won't make it too much more complex than that. How many grams of glycogen can the liver hold? Are you listening? Let's see. Everybody, okay. It means you are listening. All right. So yes, the liver can hold 100 grams. All right. Very good. Most of you got that right. But well, like I said, one glass of wine is good, but 3 bottles of wine is bad. You'll kill your body. All right. So 100 grams of carbohydrates are okay because your body can hold it. So you got 50 grams from last night already in your liver. I do. I hadn't had any carbohydrates this morning. I know my liver has been utilizing the glycogen to make glucose and all that kind of stuff, give my brain power. So I know that I've burned a little bit. And so it has 50 grams in there already. All right. But how many grams do you all typically take in? You're what I call the standard American. How many grams does the standard American typically take in every single day as far as grams of carbohydrates? That's question number 2. Let's see what your answer is. Yes, it's correct. We typically take in every single day 300 to 500 grams of carbohydrates. I gave you an example last week. I'll give you this example again. This box of Cheerios, okay? It has per serving, which is 1 cup. A cup is this, okay? A little bit less than this, as a matter of fact. 1 serving has on this thing, it says it has, okay, 37 grams of carbohydrates, okay? Now, when you put that in a bowl, you put it in about 2 cups, okay? A bowl is about 2-3 cups. So you've actually put in 74 grams in just your bowl of cereal. You already got 50 grams already there. You put in 74 grams with just a bowl of cereal that you're going to have in the breakfast in the morning. That is not what I do, but I wanted to show you that example. So you've already at your max. Your liver can only hold 100. All right. And the typical American is doing a lot more than that. So if you eat breakfast and you put in 74 grams, by the time you get to lunch, you eat a sandwich, you're going to put in another 120 grams. Then you eat dinner, you're going to have macaroni and cheese. You're going to 500 grams. You're done for the day. That's your typical diet. That's what we do every single day. But we can only hold 100. So what happens to the rest? What happens to that 200 to 300 grams that the extra we're taking in? You all know the answer. It gets made into fat. Okay, it's called de novo lipogenesis. So what happens is that if the body is only able to hold 100 grams in the form of glycogen in the liver, get this visualization. So you got the liver, now it's full. You've eaten your you've eaten your bowl of Cheerios. It's now full. But now you're going to add some toast. Now you're going to drink a glass of orange juice. You may even throw a pancake in there. Now you're at 200 grams. Right? And so basically, what is it doing with those extra grams? Just at breakfast alone. What it's doing is that extra amount of sugar goes into the bloodstream. It's looking for somewhere to go. It's looking, I got to go somewhere. And so When it does that, it activates this mechanism by increasing insulin and increasing insulin, and insulin then activates that GLUT4 transporter. That GLUT4 transporter says, okay, glucose, you're out there in the bloodstream, come on in. Because insulin opens the door for glucose to get into the cell. Glucose gets into the cell, gets converted to glycerol, and the fatty acids, remember, are circulating around the bloodstream all the time. The fatty acids are there, the glucose sees it, and it marries and forms triglyceride. That's what I mean when I say the excess glucose gets turned into fat. That's how it happens. So if you hadn't been able to visualize how that happens, when you take in greater than what your liver can hold, that glucose is out there. Two things happen. Number one, it goes into the cell as glycerol and you clamp it there and it's fat. So glucose is indeed fat when you overdo it. When you're taking an excess amount of carbohydrates, it's turning into fat. So every day you eat more than 100 grams, you're turning into fat. And then when you keep that insulin level up, you're deactivating its ability to take it out. So every single day we're adding, and we're deactivating homosensitive lipase. We can't get it out. So over a period of time, our body is expand. And when it gets to the maximum amount where the fat cells are swollen, then it makes more fat cells. And those little teeny tiny fat cells then expand. Okay? So we've got to stop that. So I'm not asking you to give up carbohydrates, even though you can, because your body is making its own. I'm asking, let's take the easy road. Let's decrease it a little bit. The second thing that happens when you take in, and a large part of you know this already, but when you're taking that extra glucose, the liver is saturated. It's got all this carbohydrates you can take. It's got this 100 grams, and so your blood can only take between 70 to 100 milligrams per deciliter. Okay. So your blood glucose, if you're checking it right now, the blood glucose levels, they like it at 70 to 100. So your doctor say your blood glucose level your fasting blood glucose is good. It's 70 to 100. That's what the body likes. It uses that 70 to 100 milligrams to feed the kidneys, to feed the brain, to feed the lungs, to feed all your organs, okay? But when you then take the Cheerios and take the toast, take the orange juice, and you spike that up to 150 milligrams per deciliter or 200 milligrams per deciliter, then the insulin is turned on again. Insulin opens that up and it stores it into fat, but it also, you got a bunch of glucose hitting those vessel walls. And glucose, when it's 70 to 100, goes through those vessel walls nice and smoothly. When it raises up to 150 milligrams, it becomes chaotic. Those glucose molecules then become dangerous because they then bump into the wall. They damage the arterial wall. They damage the arterial wall to the eyes, causing glaucoma and blindness. They damage the arterial walls of the arteries to the kidneys, causing kidney failure. They damage the arterial walls to the extremities, causing amputation. So, and then the pancreas says, I'm tired of doing this every single day. So I'm not going to even listen to insulin anymore. That's called insulin resistance. It says, I'm not going to even open this thing anymore. I'm not going to open GLUT4 transporter anymore. I'm tired. You've stressed me out one time too many. I'm not going to open it anymore. So if I can't get glucose into the cell anymore, then it's going to get out into the bloodstream. When it gets out to the bloodstream, it causes havoc on those vessels. One other point, and I don't want to bombard you, but when these little glucose molecules start damaging the arterial walls, it's sort of like making potholes into the arterial wall. The body likes to have that repaired. Guess what the repair mechanism happens to be? Our repair mechanism happens to be macrophages, leukocytes, and cholesterol. Where have we heard that before? So the cholesterol actually comes in, patches that hole we just made into our wall, patches all those holes because we've got too much glucose damaging those walls. So now we've repaired it with the cholesterol. That cholesterol, but the cholesterol is not the problem. It's the repairman. So it's sort of like the glucose is causing the fire. The cholesterol is the fireman. But what has happened is that cholesterol has been demonized primarily because when we found people with strokes and heart attacks and all that kind of stuff, we dissect them at the top of autopsy, we dissect their vessels, and we see all this cholesterol in the vessels. And we say, aha, this cholesterol caused this damage, caused this blockage of this artery, caused this heart attack, caused this stroke, caused this amputation. We demonized cholesterol when all cholesterol did was to repair the pothole. So it's sort of like blaming the fireman for starting the house fire when the fireman only came there to put it out. And so we made an association analysis, is what we call it. We made a conclusion by association, and it was wrong. And we've proved that so many times today. And you probably didn't know that. So I'm hoping that you're gathering some of this information and sort of dispelling a lot of the myths in the past that were told to you that you just didn't know. So we need cholesterol. We need phospholipids because the cholesterol makes up all our sex hormones, makes up all our thyroid, makes up all of our hormones that we're using every single day. If we didn't have cholesterol, we would die. If we didn't have phospholipids, all these fats that we're taking in, these phospholipids right here make up this cell wall. Okay, so we need phospholipids and we need cholesterol. The triglycerides are used as storages of fat. They can be used as energy. We break it down, but the triglycerides can get broken down and restored as fat. But when we combine the triglycerides with insulin, it's a bad thing. We become fat. We become sick. We become inflamed. Our bodies today are totally inflamed because of the excess amount of fat. Okay. So I'm hoping that made a lot of sense. And that's all pretty much the anatomy. And every time I tell you all this, I'm trying to say it in a different way that'll stick. So again, you become insulin resistant because you've overdone it. When you increase your glucose intake to greater than 100 grams. So let's back this tape up a little bit. That's why I asked you the question, how many grams of carbohydrates you're taking in a day? It's important for you to know that. It's important for you to know that. How many grams you're taking in a day? Because if you're taking them more than 100 grams, you're not doing yourself any favor. But I didn't want to just tell you that. I wanted to tell you why. And you got to know that your body can only hold 100 grams. And you also got to know that if you decided, I'm going to go on a zero carb diet, which is almost impossible, but I'm going to go on a zero carb diet. I'm not going to take any. You'll be fine because your body is making its own carbohydrates. But I don't want you to do that because if you're going from 500 grams a day, your dopamine response in your brain is saying, woo, this is good. I'm not going to just immediately take you down from 500 down to 20, but I want to get you down under 100 grams. But you got to be comfortable with me taking you there. You got to be comfortable with me taking you from 500 grams. And in the first couple of weeks, I'm going to take you down to 250. From 250, then down to 100. And then from 100, I want your daily intake to be no more than 75 grams. That's not asking too much. Because if you wanted to have a bowl of Cheerios, I get it. And you could do it. I wouldn't advise it. But that's only, what did I say, 70 grams if you want to have the bowl. But that's all you can take. Anything more than that glass of orange juice or that toast is going to put you over that edge, and you're going to activate this whole mechanism, and it's going to ruin everything. So I'm not going to starve you of carbohydrates. What I'd rather you do is take those low carb content foods, i.e. the green leafy vegetables, because your microbiome needs those. It would love to have those, and it would make your body a whole lot healthier. And so I'd love for you to eat the carbohydrates in the form of healthy fruit, berries. All fruits aren't healthy, but the green leafy vegetables, that could be your carbohydrates. Because when you eat a bushel of spinach, it's okay. Or a serving of spinach, you got 7 grams of carbs. And you know most of those carbs are in the form of fiber. So everybody asks me about net carbs. That's what we're talking about. But regardless of whether you count net carbs, so you're taking in fibrous carbs like vegetables, you're not really reaching that level of 100 grams of intake. Okay. So yes, you can take your spinach, your green leafy vegetables and be satisfied. You can take your avocado in the morning and your bacon and eggs and be satisfied, and your water. And then just count the grams of carbohydrates you're taking into your mouth every single day. As long as you're staying below that 100 gram, you're golden. And if you don't believe me, check it out. And if indeed this thing is not reaching above 10, and it will, if it's not reaching above 10, then cut out something else. You may be a little bit more sensitive to something. I am sensitive even to vegetables. So sometimes I have to cut my level of vegetables down, but most people aren't like me. And so if you're wondering, that's why you have to measure things. We will never get educated about our bodies until we start measuring things. When you go to the doctor, you depend on those guys measuring your hemoglobin, measuring your glucose, measuring your sodium, measuring things. When you do your mammogram, you depend on those guys to measure the calcifications in your breast. You depend on us to measure things. We're not just guessing at stuff. Not all of us. You're dependent upon us. And I'm dependent upon you to learn to take care of yourself. Because a lot of doctors are empowered by the big pharmaceutical. So you come into the office and they'll put you on metformin for your glucose. Well, you can do that with you. You can get rid of type 2 diabetes without metformin, without insulin. And you got it in your mind that once you get type 2 diabetes, once you get elevated triglycerides and things, that you have to take a pill for it. You don't. You just got to control what goes into your mouth. And the only way you're going to be able to control that is to be educated about what your body can do with it, how much it needs. Because you know as well as I do that your body can take in a glass of wine, and most people, and it's not so bad. It has a bunch of phenols and a bunch of flavonoids, and it's kind of healthy. You take in a couple of bottles of wine, you've done some serious damage. So your body can take in carbohydrates. I'm repeating this over and over and over again because it's got to stick. Your body can take in carbohydrates, but it can't take in more than 100 grams without doing some damage, without storing fat. The fat leads to, I don't feel so good, the inflammation that comes along with fat. And you locked it in there. And one last thing, I want to talk about the insulin effect. So the insulin effect means that once you take in those carbohydrates and you think that, okay, I messed up. Today was Sunday. I was with my family. My mama made some good old macaroni and cheese and some baked potato and some mashed potatoes, and I just had to eat it. Okay. But you got to remember that the insulin effect, because you just spiked your insulin because a baked potato is highly glycemic, mashed potatoes are highly glycemic, rice and pasta are highly glycemic, meaning they're going to increase insulin. Insulin is not our friend right now. Insulin has its purpose, but right now it's not our friend because all our fat cells are there because we've locked them there by insulin. All right. So what do we have to do after that Sunday dinner? Well, on Monday, we're thinking, okay, I'm going to take in my fish. I'm going to take in my chicken. For breakfast, I'm going to take in bacon and eggs, just like Dr. Duncan said, because I'm not going to take any carbohydrates on Monday. But on Monday, the insulin effect is still there. So when you take in that fish, that bacon and eggs, that gets stored as fat. Surprise. Nobody's told you that, right? So that insulin effect happens on Monday, and some of it happens on Tuesday. Because your insulin effect is still up. Your insulin effect is doing all the things that we just talked about doing on this slide here. It's activating and it's pushing it in there. So you're thinking that on Monday and Tuesday, because you're eating what Dr. Duncan says to eat, you're going to be okay. No. Because if I eat on Sunday a baked potato and then on Monday I eat the right things, the right foods, that gets stored as fat because my insulin is still up and everything gets stored as fat. So what can I do? I've got to get the insulin down and the insulin effect down. And that's where fasting comes in. You've heard about it. You've read about it. You've seen it on the internet, intermittent fasting. It's a real thing. But I want you to know why it works. It works not because you're starving yourself. It works because you're lowering insulin. every time you go a few hours without taking in carbohydrates or without taking in food or whatever, you're lowering insulin. Insulin doesn't have anything to do. So it's okay, I'm going down. And 12 hours later, I'm going down some more. 24 hours later, I'm going down some more. So you don't want to hear this, but in order to get rid of that insulin effect from that baked potato, that macaroni and cheese, you got to do some fasting, lowering your insulin. And so you got to give the body a break. So you're going to fast 18 hours and just take some water. You don't want to hear that, do you? I know you don't. Well, then if you don't want to hear it and you want to avoid the insulin and the insulin effect, don't take in the baked potato. Don't take in the macaroni and cheese. And if you do, just realize that the next day is going to be a problem. Remember, a baked potato, I don't know how many grams of carbohydrates it has, but it has a glycemic index pretty high. And basically, it's going to raise insulin. And so if you take that in there, you can take in a certain amount. I would rather you take in the healthy vegetables to fill your glycogen levels up. But if you got to take in the baked potato, you got to take it in, but you got to go on a little bit of a fast. If you want to lose fat, if you're not interested in losing fat, then I'm just talking in the breeze here. But if you want to truly lose fat, you got to exercise these principles. So if you got to have your baked potato, if you got to have your cheesecake, Lord help me. If you got to have that, then again, if you got to have your processed food and you're going to do it on one day, then you got to fast a little while. You got to bring that insulin down, or else whatever you take in the next day, the next few hours, you're going to store it as fat. And so just think about what you do every single day. You'll take in your baked potato, but then the next meal you're going to take in is going to be some pasta or some rice or some bread or a sandwich, and you're having an additive effect. That's why our cells of fat grow. That's why they multiply, and that's why we get sick. All right, good seeing. All right, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. So I'm going to look over here at the slides. At the chat box. All right, so now I need you to ask some questions. Let me see if I got time. Ooh, not much. I only have 10 minutes. This is an hour and a half long session. And let's see. Taking 50. If I take in 50 or less carbs a day, I can stay in ketosis. If you're consistently taking the 50 or less carbs a day, yes, absolutely. Because and in general, nothing is exact. So when I say 100 grams of carbohydrates, some people have the ability to store 80 grams. So some people have the ability to store 110 grams. 100 is the average grams of carbohydrates that your body stores as glycogen. Obviously, when you take in, most of the glycogen gets immediately taken up, or most of the glucose you take in gets immediately taken up by the muscle, because we're constantly using our muscles. To breathe requires our diaphragm to move. So when we take in carbohydrates, that immediately goes into that. So we don't count those, but the ones that actually go into are the ones that are in excess of that 100. They go into the bloodstream, causes ravage to the cell walls, and we start getting these little spots going in front of our eyes. Those are just little micro infarcts of your vessels caused by that damage of those little small, teeny tiny vessels with the glucose just damaging the sidewall and making these potholes in your vessels. And then the little plaques get developed primarily because the cholesterol comes and tries to smooth it out. And eventually it causes blindness, eventually it causes kidney disease, eventually it causes amputations and strokes and heart attacks. So that's all glucose, okay? All righty, what else I got? Let's see. Got the names in there. Let's see, it takes 50. Well, I've been counting total carbs. Should we be counting net carbs or total carbs? So you can do either one. When you talk about net carbs, you're obviously talking about, the carbs that your intestine and your microbiome use are fibrous carbs. They're not, we don't need to take in carbs, but yeah, your microbiome is much healthier when you do take in fibrous carbs, okay? So we're not taking in the green leafy vegetables for our energy. We're not taking it in for us. We're taking it in for our microbiome. If you like spinach, and I do, if you like asparagus, my mom tried to make me eat when I was young. I hated it, but now I love it. It's good to know that I'm not taking those in for energy. I'm taking those in to feed my microbiome. And it's good that this so happened that I like it. But I want you to know that scientifically, it's not used for much other than your microbiome. But all the other carbohydrates that you need, all the other glucose you need, your body's making it. And it's making it from that glycerol from the fat. Triglyceride breaks it up, glycerol, fatty acids, the glycerol goes back into the pyruvate, gets converted back into glucose, it dumps it back into the bloodstream. The amino acids, they then go down to the carbon groups, and then they make glucose as well. We're making our own glucose. It's fabulous. Our body is so intelligent. It's not even funny. I mean, it's so intelligent. That's why we call it essential amino acids, essential fatty acids. What essential means is that if we don't take it in by mouth, we'll die. Well, that's essential amino acids, the proteins, essential fatty acids, the fats. But you hadn't heard me say essential carbohydrates, which means that you ain't got to take them in. Our body is making them. And so our body gives us some leeway. It says, okay, fine, if you want to have the icing on top of your cake, sort of, then I'm going to allow you to take in 100 grams. That's all you can take. When you go above that, you're going to cause some problems. And it ain't hard. So that's how we're going to get started. We're going to basically take our 500 or our 400 grams that we're taking in right now. And so the lesson for the day is let's start to cut it. And so I do know, and you do know, that carbohydrates cause dopamine release. So it causes a tranquil effect in your body. We need that tranquil effect because we got a lot of stress every day. But that's why I can't take it away from you altogether. But I want to wean you down. Just like if you're smoking, you can't just stop. You got to wean yourself down. So let's go from 500 grams to 250 grams for the next couple of weeks. And then go from 250 grams down to 100 grams after that. And then I'm not going to take it away altogether, but get into the habit of counting the carbs and getting it down to 75 grams to 50 grams. And we'll park it there. We'll park it there. And so that I'm not robbing you of all carbohydrates, but count it, and then measure it by seeing, because if you're not consistently reaching your goals as far as ketosis, that means something has stopped the fat burning. Something in that diagram that I showed you has been activated. And so something has a little bit too much carbohydrates. So just think about what I said. You can take it any way you want, but for the most part, your storage of fat is dependent highly upon insulin. Your insulin activation is dependent highly on your carbohydrates. So, i.e., the primary way for your storage of fat and for you to become obese and to have surgery and Wegovy and ESG is primarily carbohydrates. So yes, can I rob myself of a surgical technique by telling you just to stop taking the carbs and you can do this on your own? Absolutely. But all I'm trying to do is to tell you, I got a tool to help you. Sometimes we need a little help. That's all I'm doing. I'm giving you the medicine. But I'm not giving you the drugs. I'm not giving you the drugs. And that's why I'm a little bit on the fence about getting you too dependent upon the drugs that pharmaceuticals are making in the form of GLP-1 analogs. I want you to depend upon your own GLP-1, but I'm going to give you some tools to kind of help that along. Okay. All righty. All right. GI for baked potato is 76. Yes, it is. And the more you bake it, or the higher that glycemic index, because processed foods, the more you process a food, even meat, the more you cook a meat, and it becomes more processed, the more level of process hurts your body. So cooking is a form of processing. That's why raw vegetables are better than all vegetables. Raw meats are better than all meats. We can't eat things raw, but when you start cooking stuff, you want to lightly cook stuff. All right. So yeah, when you bake a potato, or when you mash a potato, or you fry a potato, that's processing it more. And so it gets a higher glycemic index. All righty. Fasting water only, no coffee or herbal tea. Yes, you can. I mean, water, herbal tea, coffee. This coffee here, this bullet coffee, basically it has some MCT oil in it, medium chain triglyceride. That's a whole different topic for a whole different section. MCT increases the mitochondria. It slows the aging process down by a lot of mechanisms that we can talk about. There's another product I use called Cogni Grape that helps my brain because I'm getting up there. But there are a lot of things that I try to do that naturally empower my cells to do the things that they're supposed to do. I stop the damage, I stop the fires by decreasing the carbohydrates, but at the same time, I try to take in things with medium chain triglycerides. And we'll talk about that sometime. Medium chain triglycerides are good for your mitochondria. It gets involved with your mitochondria, and it helps kind of put you into ketosis as well. And so your body can use the medium chain. So look up medium chain triglycerides. There's YouTube videos on it all everywhere, and see how it helps your body. That'll be a good topic for us to discuss at some point in time. All right. Yeah, some sugar alternatives still raise your blood sugar. Yeah, they do, but you got to remember that it just came out a couple of weeks ago, erythritol. You remember we talked about some of the things that are in sweet and low and things of that nature. All those things can actually be components that are actually causing increased incidence of cancer. One of the things that we talked about is in the Coca-Colas and the sugar-free Cokes and all that are the things that eventually turn into formaldehyde. So formaldehyde will keep your fat cells protected. And so when you take in a lot of the sweet and lows and things of that nature that have the additives that turn into formaldehyde, you're protecting your fat cells. So the only way you're going to be able to get rid of some of your fat cells if they don't have a good blood supply is by autophagy. So your fat cells have got to be consumed by your body, but you got to quit feeding the fire. You got to quit putting in those additives that continue the problem. So more and more we're finding out about these sugar substitutes, the more I'm going to kind of try to keep you away from it. How soon after surgery do you prescribe weight loss meds? Interesting question. Well, hopefully not too soon after surgery, but we are doing several studies. Like when I do the ESG, people kind of endoscopic sleeve gastroplasty, which is a non-surgical technique for me to do a sleeve. It's not covered by insurance yet, but we have 7-year data. That data shows that you can lose just as much weight with the ESG as you can with the sleeve, almost, okay? But it only works for a limited number of patients. You can't, with a body mass index of 50, expect to lose with the ESG like you did with the sleeve. But in certain patients, I'll use the ESG and I'll go along for several months and then reach a plateau. Then I'll add some phentermine. I'll add some semaglutide to it in order to jumpstart the system again. The studies have again shown that there's no one way to do things. We can do mix and match and add additives to accomplish our goals, and that's what we commonly do. All righty. I always struggle with what breaks the fast. Breakfast. Sugar-free water, flavor, coffee syrup, milk, cream in my coffee. Yeah. So if you get some of this bulletproof coffee, go on the internet, get the coffee, and then look up MCT. There are MCT creamers. If you're putting those medium chain triglyceride, that kind of helps things out a little bit. So yeah, putting sugar and cream, regular creamer, those are all processed things, the creamers. So you don't want to put those in there, that's for sure. But you can put some things that are made of MCT. I forget the guy's name on the website, but just look up MCT oil, MCT creamers on the internet. Okay. All righty. My checklist is complete. I think that I'm about how does that non-surgical procedure work? So I go inside the mouth with the scope, and on the end of my scope is a little suturing device. And so I go inside the stomach, and with the sleeve, I go inside your abdominal cavity. It's surgery, and I take out 90% of your stomach. With ESG, I go inside your stomach, and I just suture up 90% of your stomach. Yeah. So I just close it up from the inside. So basically you have a small area. And what we're essentially accomplishing is activation of certain hormones, but we're actually, we talked about calories before. I don't like to harp on calories, but yes, one of the main tenets of bariatric surgery is that we decrease the volume that you can take in. And again, it goes towards making you full faster so that you are going through a period of you're going through a period of fasting. So you're taking in smaller amounts, so you're not as hungry as much. So you're fasting longer. And then when you do eat, you're only eating a small amount. So you're still fasting longer and you're not raising insulin. And as long as you're not raising insulin, you're not storing fat. So all the mechanisms work by activating certain hormones that don't make you feel hungry, increase your metabolism, and decreasing the volume of food that you take in. So you're creating a caloric deficit. And that's what almost all procedures will do, is to create a caloric deficit. So the ESG goes in and closes the stomach down to where you only have 10 to 15 to 20% of your stomach that's actually exposed to food, and you get full really quick. Okay. All righty. Well, the qualifications for revision: if you've regained your weight, or if you're having a lot of reflux or bowel kind of material, and you've had there's a revision and then there's a conversion. The revision is only for those people who've had bypass. So we have a new technique for revisions now. So when we do them at the surgery center, we have a combination of that endoscopic procedure that I go in and I will close the hole down, because most times when people have had a gastric bypass, after a period of years, they will stretch their opening because they've taken in carbohydrates. I can narrow that down. Once I'm confident that you're following the rules, I can narrow that down by actually closing it up with a stitch. Then I'll go inside the abdominal cavity and I'll lengthen what's called your biliopancreatic limb, which causes some activation of your GLP-1. So it's a dual technique: decreasing the caloric intake by decreasing the volume of food that you're taking in, creating a calorie deficit, and then also activating your GLP-1. That's our revision nowadays. Okay. The conversion is that if you've had a sleeve. If you've had a sleeve and you're starting to get reflux or weight regain, most of the insurance companies require you to have some sort of reflux, but if you're starting to have that, then I can convert the sleeve to a bypass. And again, all I'm doing is taking the sleeve. Sometimes I'll narrow it down a little bit, but oftentimes I don't. But I'm taking the sleeve and I bring up the sleeve and to a portion of the bowel that has the GLP-1. I'm activating GLP-1 again. That's the key to these operations, is the GLP-1 activation of hormones, as well as creating a calorie deficit. That's how these all work. Okay, let's see. I used MCT while on keto. Good. MCT helps you be in keto. How does that non-surgical procedure work? Is magnesium recommended? Yes, magnesium, we can get deficient in magnesium, especially if you're having problems with the bowels. Just taking some magnesium, either in the form, a lot of times you'll take in your vitamins. The vitamins that I use are these two vitamins here, okay? One is called the Fusion. These are the only ones that I like as far as taste. I know other ones are called Celebrate. You can get these off the internet. I think we have some samples in the office to see how you can taste them and to see if they're compatible with your taste, because they all taste terrible, but there's some that taste better than others. What are the qualifications for revision? I think I answered that question. Your insurance company will allow you to have a revision for reflux problems or weight regain, but they usually bend more towards if you're having problems. If you're having a revision because of weight regain, they like you to have some other complication like reflux as well. What is the revision for the sleeve? That's called a conversion. Okay, that is what I just talked about. When you have a sleeve and your weight regain or you're refluxing, then you need to have that converted to a bypass. And all we're doing with that is converting the sleeve to the bypass and just activating the GLP-1 by bringing up that bowel, that small intestine that contains GLP-1, So it's in line with the food stream that activates the GLP-1 receptors. Okay. Any suggestions on lymphatic cleanses? I don't have any suggestions for that because I'm not that knowledgeable about it, but I will look it up for you in my medical books. I have bad leg, torso, and hand cramping because they do the magnesium deficiency. It can, yeah, it surely can. So get some magnesium and make sure that you're checking out all your vitamins, because again, if you're not taking in your bariatric vitamins, because there are a lot of patients that are out there taking in one a day or gummies or any vitamins across the shelf, stop that, please. Please stop that. You got to take in bariatric vitamins. You got to have in 2 to 3 times the amount that you would normally take in with a one-a-day vitamin. Okay. Missed the name of the coffee is Bullet Coffee. And again, it doesn't taste great, but you get used to it over a period of time. Okay. Will I be able to take any medication after the surgery, or will I have to crush it down? So it depends upon the medicine. But if it's capsule, you can break it apart. If it's crushable and it's not time release, you can indeed crush it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think I've run out of time. I think I've bored enough of you guys. And so I really, really appreciate you guys. Don't forget to set your clocks, spring forward tomorrow. And I hope to be able to see you all again next week. If you want to, just kind of tell your friends and family to come along with me, because I love having you here. And I love teaching you guys the great things in order to keep your lives healthier, happier. All right. So you guys have a great Saturday, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.